can't talk about comfort foods without talking about soup. But even something as comforting as soup can really rock your world. And that's why I've invited Chef Paul Dagenbach today to show you an amazing dual soup. He puts two soups in one bowl, and when I first saw this, it was early on in my cooking career, I thought, wow, this is what I want to do. So I'm so thrilled you're here to show this to us today.
It's great to be here, Amy.
They're very cool soups. I've got to say, you've got a roasted tomato and an eggplant, right?
And a roasted eggplant also.
So how do we get started?
So what we've done, we've already started with some onions and garlic. We're going to start with the tomato soup. We start with the onions and garlic. We've already started sauteing. So after that gets going for a while, we're going to saute, add our little basil and oregano.
Now you're using dried basil and dried oregano, and you're adding them early on. That's another thing I learned from you. You're really trying to bring out the flavors.
Right, that's what it does, because with the oil that we started with, the olive oil, it's going to, in fact, you can smell the aroma.
Yeah.
But that brings out the taste of the onions and the garlic. And I use that instead of fresh, because fresh I use in some soups, but like if I'm making a tomato basil soup, I'll use just the fresh, but with the dried, it works really great with this.
Okay, perfect. So you just let that go till it's aromatic.
Right.
Okay.
Probably about 3 or 4 minutes. And then what we're going to do is I just have some, if it's the middle of summer and you have some great tomatoes, you can use fresh, but we do this all year long, so I use canned.
Okay.
So
and canned, chopped in their juice?
Right.
Just okay.
So after this cooks for a little bit, we're going to add the tomato juice.
Now, you know, one of the things that I think is important is you've got here all of your ingredients ready to go. This is one of the things that we teach at the cooking school is mise en place.
Mise en place.
All that prep ready.
Everything in its place.
Yeah, you don't want to find out halfway through that you don't have any eggplant for your eggplant
This
soup.
is true.
Or, you know, it's got to be all ready to go.
So what I'm doing right now is adding some tomatoes. And again, this is the tomatoes and the juice. Just find whatever brand you really like. Now what this has to do is cook for about 10 to 15 minutes.
Just till the tomatoes break down a little bit more, and okay.
The biggest thing about making this soup, too, is both soups have to be the same consistency or it doesn't work in the bowl, as you well know, because we've done this before.
That's right. And, you know, it's sort of like sauce painting on a plate or putting these two soups together. If you have one very thick and chunky and one very thin and runny, this soup is not going to work.
This is
so
true.
People will see a little bit more what we're talking about as we get to the finished product. But you might have to tweak it with a little more cream, a little more broth to get these the exact same consistency.
That's right.
So you'd let that go about 15 minutes, and then we're going to
Puree
it.
Right. So a little blender tip that I've learned over the years. Anytime I do something hot in a blender, I never fill it up more than halfway, because you just never know, because that hot liquid.
I've seen what happens.
Yes.
I'm the poster child. The top blows off. Let's just put it spews out hot liquid. It's really not a good thing. So yeah, don't fill it all the way to the top.
So we're going to fill it up halfway. The other thing I always do is I take the lid off. I mean, you want to put a towel over it.
Okay.
Because there's too much combustion, so.
Here's your towel.
We're going to put that on, and I always do it on low speed. Turn it on for 1 second. So we're going to put the towel, and then see how it's, there we go.
Yeah. So you'd let that go until it's completely pureed.
That's right. You want to go at least longer than shorter.
Okay.
Because you want it to be a nice consistency.
Okay. And here's one that's completely done.
That's right.
And let's just say that this soup would be absolutely fantastic on its own. I've got
With a little Parmesan be great.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be great as is. But what's really going to take it over the top is adding this eggplant, which I can't wait for.
So to do the eggplant soup, again, we've started to saute our little bit of onions and garlic. And both recipes have a lot of the same ingredients. So we start our onions and garlic, and then what we're going to do after that's hot, we're just going to add our eggplant, which has been roasted, and then I peeled it and diced it.
And you know, if you're roasting eggplant for this soup, I would go ahead and roast some extra, maybe to toss into some pasta later in the week, maybe to make as a sandwich filling. You always think that way too, don't you? Sort of as much prep as you can do for future meals is a good thing to do.
And you can freeze it. The only thing about freezing, it gets a little watery.
Yeah.
But for for this soup, it works pretty good. So
Now, you're doing the eggplant and the tomato, but really you could do any two complementary flavors. I told you I did the pumpkin and the brie, which was fabulous together. What are some other flavor
the other one I've
duos?
done that's really great is roasted pepper and then goat cheese.
Oh,
And
that would be good.
But you always want to think of two colors that are totally different, like a black bean and pepper jack cheese are great.
Ooh, that would be good.
If you like a little hotter. And then you can add enough hotness to it if you like it really spicy, or if you like a little more mild.
So everything, as usual, these recipes are a starting point.
Exactly.
Okay, so you've sauteed this. Again, you'd let it go about 15 minutes?
Yes, I would. And then what we're going to do is add a little chicken stock. Now this is going to take a couple minutes. We're going to let this reduce, come to a boil, probably about 10 minutes. Kind of depends how much volume you have in there. So after this cooks for a little while, then all we're going to do is add a little bit of cream.
Okay. Cream. Now, you know, somebody's going to ask me, can we go lighter than cream to
With
reduce?
like half and half. The only thing is, if you do, it kind of adjusts the consistency of the final product. So you have to watch that.
So cream is what we want to use.
Exactly.
Bottom line.
And you know what? You've got no cream in the other soup, so between the two, they're not too bad.
Way to justify it. I like that.
I always try to justify things like that. So this takes about 15 minutes, and then again, we're going to puree it.
Okay.
But we've already pureed some.
So we've got two all ready to go, and here comes the exciting part. Are you ready?
I think we are.
Let's see. You've got kind of a low soup bowl, and that's
I do.
probably a good way to start with this, isn't it? You don't want a really deep bowl.
This is true, because if you have a deep bowl, you have too much soup. And those soups are fairly rich, so you don't need a lot. I'm putting about 3 to 4 ounces in each one. And you always want to make sure you have the exact same size ladles,
Yes, that's important.
because you're going to pour these at the same time. So, again, the consistency is the biggest thing.
And you can really see these are so close. Now, let's say your eggplant was just a little thick. Would you thin with more cream? Would you thin with more broth?
I would probably do more broth.
Okay. So just use that in little tiny amounts, because you don't want to get to the point where you're...
You can always add more, but once it's in there, you can't take it away.
Exactly.
And then
Okay.
if the tomato soup was a little bit thick, you could add a little tomato juice.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
I was going to give you a drum roll, but I thought it might make you mess up.
Okay, the other part of this is what? We have a Parmesan paint we're going to put in here.
Oh, yes.
So
Here you
there's
go.
a couple ways to do this. Parmesan paint is basically just a little heavy cream and Parmesan cheese melted together. It's simple. You don't have to strain it or anything.
Okay.
So what we have our Parmesan paint, and again, you want this to be this can be a little bit thinner, which it usually is. So we're going to go down the middle.
Now, right there, that's so fabulous. But
really
just wait
is.
till you see what happens. Okay.
And then we're going to swirl.
I love this yin yang. I love that.
Are you going to try one?
All right, I will. Do you
All
want me
right,
to?
I sure do.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of ways you can do this.
And also, we should say that if this makes you nervous, you can absolutely, you could fill your bowl with the eggplant soup and then put a little tomato on
Right.
top, or just try it. If it
Or
doesn't
you can use
work,
2 measuring cups to pour them in at the same time. Works really well, too.
Okay, now I'm going to hope I do this right.
All right, come on, Amy.
Thanks for putting me on the
You need
spot.
a drum roll.
Oop.
But
I
we can
got
always
the
wipe the
edge.
plate. So
Yep. Let's wipe the edge so that I don't have that ugly spot. But then I'll show you what I did for mine. Thanks
we
for
go.
saving me, Paul.
No
Okay, now
problem.
I would take this Parmesan, go down the center. Whoops. And then run back and forth with my handy little skewer.
Mm-hmm. That looks pretty good.
Like a desert sunset. There you go. Do you want to try one more for people
All
to
right,
see?
we'll try something else.
And then you were saying we might garnish with some Parmesan
Mm-hmm.
or any number of things, which would be beautiful. You could even do a little chopped herb.
You could.
Here, I'll cover up my bad spot with some Parmesan. Creative garnishing.
All right, we'll do one with, you're not real confident, so we'll put a little in there.
Yeah. And how
Then you have a little
fun
bullseye.
is that? And anybody can do that.
So then we're going to take the Parmesan paint and just, so I mean, there's a lot of ways to do this. So you have three
that,
different
too.
presentations. You can do a dinner party with everybody has a different presentation too.
I love it.
It'd be fun.
And
so.
you know, in fact, if you were having friends over and wanted to be a little bit casual about this, you could have your friends try to do their own.
Maybe
you know,
do
have a
somebody
little
else's. If it doesn't
competition.
work out, they can have the better looking one.
These are beautiful. Can you see why I wanted him to show you how to do this? These are great. Thanks.
You're welcome.
You can find these recipes on cetconnect.org. Just click Amy's Table.